Hi everybody. Today I would like to introduce you to Joshua Messick. He recorded an amazing Hammered Dulcimer part on Give and Receive. Welcome Joshua. Thank you for taking the time to chat with me. Maybe you can give us some background on when you started playing Hammered Dulcimer and how you got introduced to this beautiful instrument.
Well, First of all, thank you so much for this awesome opportunity to be part of this project and get to have this conversation a long way away from each other.
Yes,
physically.
Yes, on the other side of the world. Yeah,
that's right. That's right. It's technology.
Yeah,
I think
crazy.
sometimes we get so used to it, but how cool is this?
Yeah,
this is so cool.
It's amazing.
Well, hey, I first heard the Hammered Dulcimer when I was 4 on a cassette tape.
Wow.
And old enough to remember those. Not quite old enough to remember the 8-tracks, but anyway. And I told my mom that it was so beautiful I wanted to learn to play it.
Cool.
When I was 9, I actually was at a multi-instrumentalist's home, and she was also a music teacher, and I saw this triangle instrument, and I said, "What's that?" She said, "It's a Hammered Dulcimer." And I said, "Oh, I would love to play one of those." I told my mom that's what I wanted to do. And I just started taking lessons with her and fell in love with the instrument over and over and over again. And here I am.
Awesome.
Now at 37, I think I am.
Just
still playing.
Just 1 year younger than me then.
Yeah. And not quite as good looking though. Not
well,
quite as good looking.
We're both good looking, so that's we're fine. So you already at the age of 9 you started to play the dulcimer, or what was it? Were you older?
I was 9 when I started playing. Yeah.
And what intrigued you to the instrument? What's the special thing about it?
Percussion with strings.
Yeah.
I mean, as a 9-year-old boy, I love to hit things, and I mean, pretty much anything in the kitchen's a musical instrument, right?
Yeah.
Pots, pans, you name it.
Yeah. So your mother was probably done with you hitting the pans and stuff.
That was part of it, and we had a piano and other instruments, and I loved music.
Yeah.
And I just didn't find an instrument before 9 that I really was in love with. So they took me to the multi-instrumentalist home just to see
what you liked,
what I liked.
Yeah.
And aside from percussion with strings, which is cool and, by the way, rare, it's just the sound of the instrument has this celestial, ethereal quality to it that is captivating.
It's pure.
It pure is a great word. Maybe that's why I called one of my albums "Pure Hammered Dulcimer."
Hey.
But anyway, plug,
Exactly.
Shameless self-promotion. But beyond that, I would say that it's one of those things that
you felt a connection.
I felt a connection. Yeah. It's like the instrument chose me in a way, but there was just that the qualities that fit my personality, because so many instruments, there's these huge music libraries that you can tap into. But I mean, music library, I mean in the literal sense of sheet music or resources available, teaching guides, et cetera, or recorded music where there's hundreds of thousands of records to listen to. And you can always innovate with music, but let's face it, a piano, there's so much that's already been done with it. And it's all great music, and I'm not dismissing the piano because of that. But the Hammered Dulcimer, it's like on the cutting edge of innovation, at least to this generation. So the fact that there wasn't a whole lot of music written for it, there wasn't a lot of recordings and players, it fit my personality, which is kind of that pioneer American spirit that likes to take something and do their own thing with it.
Yeah.
So when I hit a teenager, I really kind of stopped taking lessons and just went out on my own of innovation. And I'd say that who I am today as an artist is that is a key word of my artistic hat or identity is innovative hammered dulcimer music.
But let me take it a step back, because you said there's not much music out there. I mean, the hammered dulcimer goes back to its origin in the Middle East. Am I correct? India, Santoor.
Yeah,
they have similarities, of course. It's a family.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're correct. Yeah, its origins are in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in that regard, did you listen to music from there as well? Or did it influence you? Or is that something different?
Somewhat when I got into my 20s, I would say.
Yeah.
That was kind of a thing I explored quite a bit. But to be clear, I mean, yes, percussion with strings or trapezoidal chordophones, if we want to get technical.
Yeah.
The origin is the Middle East, but the variety that I play is a Western European instrument with American innovation. Okay. And there was a lot of music that was played in Western Europe on this instrument before notation was a thing, or the printing press was invented, and it was able to be replicated. So most of the music has not been preserved. It's very difficult for me to know what hammered dulcimer music in the 1400s would have sounded like. I can take a good guess, but it's not like organ music that Bach would have written, to where I can have a written archive of that and be able to make an educated guess as to what Bach would have sounded like. I really have virtually nothing that I'm aware of, at least.
So it was more like a culture thing, also in the in Eastern Europe, in all parts. But you know, for me as a Dutchman, I'm not used to this instrument. I've never encountered it before. So that's in that way, it's not as popular as it might be in the U.S.
It kind of depends. If we want to get into the varieties, which they're kind of akin to a mandolin and a ukulele. You as a string player know a mandolin and a ukulele are very different.
Yep.
But what if you'd never seen a small guitar-like instrument that you played like this, and you saw two musicians doing this on a small instrument?
Yeah.
Well, you would say, well, that's virtually the same. Well, they're not. And it's the same thing with what I play, the hammered dulcimer, to when you get into Central or Eastern Europe. There are versions of this called the cymbalum, the santur, the santuri, santur in Iran.
Yeah.
So, but I can't really play them.
Okay.
That's how different they are. I mean, I can make sound on them, but I can't play one of my original compositions or a cover tune without spending hours and hours figuring it out.
Yeah, so they are tuned differently as well.
They're tuned differently. They sound different. The mallets are different. The playing technique is different. And that's not parallel. What is written for a cymbalum is not a parallel adaptation, or you have to retranscribe the music for the hammered dulcimer. They just don't cross pollinate well between the two instruments.
What I was wondering, now we're talking about tuning, how often do you change the strings? Because for a guitar player, it can be every week or something, depending on how much you play. But for a dulcimer player,
for my instrument, there's 3 different types of materials, because it's a 5-octave range. And the low strings, I do have to change a little more frequently, because they're a wound string. Just like a guitar, the low strings are wound.
Yeah.
So those have to be changed about every year and a half to be optimal. Now, if I'm plucking the instrument, which I don't do on your project, except for a glissando, I think I actually did pluck.
Yeah.
But if you're plucking those low strings like a guitar, you do need to change them more frequently. Now, the other strings that aren't wound can last 8, 10, 12 years before needing to be changed. It's kind of like akin to a piano. How often do you change piano strings?
Yeah, that's right.
Not very often.
Yeah, it also depends because of the grease from the hands, and it differs from yeah. Cool. I read something about you becoming a national champion in '03.
Wow.
Is that correct?
Yeah, this guy did his research.
Back
Deep buried somewhere on the internet. Yeah, deep.
That's something to be proud of, right? I mean,
It is. It's something I worked hard for as a teenager.
how old were you? 17 or 18?
I would have probably been 18. I think I was 18. Yeah. I got to be honest, Phil, I don't think about it very much today, but it did motivate me to become a much, much better player. And it drove me to pursue excellence at my craft. And I'd say that the title is a nice, it's a nice reward, but really the value for me is becoming a better person and a better musician.
Yeah,
and since then, there's been other things that have motivated me, such as playing on Give and Receive.
Hey.
Totally different style of music. We don't even know what to call it, right? The genre. It's blurred music.
Totally crazy.
Yeah, it's just a blurred genre.
I love it.
But I love it too. And just exploring collaborations, things like that keep you hungry, keep you motivated, and keep you on the edge, a little bit uncomfortable. And okay, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm going to do it anyway. That's a great place to be. And those kind of things are what we as musicians are constantly looking for.
Yeah, it's the adventure of music.
It is.
Yeah. So going back to the song, you I don't know if I remember correctly, but you mentioned that you had to change the tuning of the instrument.
Yeah.
To match the key.
So, yeah, Hammered Dulcimer configuration, and I'm assuming this audience is, if you're listening to this, you're kind of a music techie in a way.
Well, they have to.
Yeah, they have to
become.
Yeah. So it's conveniently diatonic and inconveniently chromatic.
Wow.
And once again, the version I play is a Western European instrument. Think late Middle Ages, early Renaissance-ish. And the music of that time period was church modes primarily.
Yeah.
And so you're thinking the 7 church modes. Well, they did kind of think in terms of keys and sharps and flats, but then again, they were really thinking in terms of feelings of moods based on those church modes. So that's how the Hammered Dulcimer is configured, is to make the 7 church modes make a ton of sense. Now, I'm not going to spend the time explaining it, but it is also chromatic. But when you jump into chromaticism, it becomes kind of the feeling of a patchwork quilt when you're playing it. It's like, okay, so...
because when you look closely at the recording, you see, for me, a chromatic is one step up. But sometimes I see you going all the way to a different spot on the instrument to hit a chromatic note.
Right. And if it had been diatonic church modes, then it would have been all in the same area on the instrument. When you jump out of that, so really, there was a little bit of alternate tuning that I did to make it sound better. It's not that I couldn't play it with this jump, but this is going to be more of a musical phrasing than
all
this.
Yeah.
And dulcimer players, we get used to this, but when I'm live, I'll do this. But on a recording where I'm trying to get the absolute best sound, then I'll take the time to go ahead and alternate tune. Some purist would argue with me, but my goal in the studio is to make it listenable.
Yeah, I can imagine.
That's
because when you place the note on a different spot on the instrument, it's going to resonate differently, and you're also recording stereo, so the stereo field is influenced as well. Correct?
100%. And I think through all of those things when a prime example of that plug is my my newest video, Resilience, where I did I think it's a 9-part dulcimer orchestra. Well, I wanted the stereo field to be very
Natural?
controlled.
Okay.
Controlled, I think is the word. Definitely not natural to a traditional orchestra, but I didn't want the melody going back and forth. I wanted it primarily on the left for one part, primarily on the right for the other part, but still I wanted everything to be recorded in stereo to create that bigger image. Well, I did alternate tune the dulcimer in that instance to where it would just be a consistent panning. And I'm constantly thinking through those things when I collaborate with you and other artists. How is this going to sound in a recording? And it's just a different art form than live. I mean, live, that doesn't really matter as much. But on an album where people are listening on high-end headphones or really good systems, they're in it for the recording experience.
Yeah.
And that's something I definitely think through.
So is that something you think of for your own projects as well? I mean, or is it always tuned the same way and you always start from scratch?
I do think that through. On my album Pure Hammered Dulcimer, I did do it from a purist standpoint of view to where there was not alternate tuning. There was not any overdubbing, any special effects. It was 100% organic. But I did think through it on my writing approach or my arranging approach. And it was extremely intentional. So when you're writing for Hammered Dulcimer, that's the stereo image is something you need to think about. And it does matter live, not as much as recording. But when you're playing solo in a performance, people will feel it. They may not be able to say why. They may not be able to articulate, okay, he did this or that, but they'll say, wow, I enjoyed that performance.
Yeah.
There was nothing there that was distracting. And so, yeah, I do absolutely think through resonance, because when you hit a string way up here and then hit a string way down here, and there's no energy to mask that sustain with new notes, then those notes are just going to resonate for forever. So compressing it into a smaller area on the instrument makes a ton of sense in your writing.
And I also noticed, and that's also something I noticed in the recording, of course, but in the video you can see it very obviously. You have some dampening as well on these on the outsides, right? I mean, is that something gradual, or is it on or off?
Yes, it could be either or. It could be either or. So the damper mechanism on a hammered dulcimer is like a piano, except the opposite.
Okay.
To where you're stopping the sustain when you push the damper down instead of opening it up. So it creates some cool options. And then there's also the element of hand dampening, to where if I do have that one string resonating and I don't want to stop all the sustain, just too much dissonance, then I can hand dampen a sound as well.
Yeah.
So those are my approach when I'm arranging, writing, performing, is I will play the piece and get it as good as possible without the dampers. In fact, I don't even hook the pedal up or anything like that. I just play it. And then as the final comb through, once I have all the issues worked out organically with just me and the hammers or the plucking and the hand dampening, then I will throw on the dampers.
Yeah, cool. Okay, something totally different. You became a father last year. Because I'm a father as well of two young boys. How do you balance your career as a musician with family life?
I love being a dad. Let's start there.
Yep, gotcha.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
I'd say it's one of the greatest joys in the world. And I value family. I love my wife. I love my daughter. I love all of us together. So you have to keep your priorities in line where you're in my instance, my wife and daughter come before my career. They're number one. But as artists, there's always that good, healthy desire to create and to integrate
To create some balance, of course.
Yeah, and to create that balance. And I'd say you have to be comfortable with things being different. And I think that if you want things to be the same as they were when you were either single or married without children,
it's a hard time.
It's not going to be. It's just not going to be. And you have to be flexible in that regard. So as long as you can kind of reinvent yourself a little bit, there's ways. So for me, it's been difficult, at least for the first 9 months of Harper's life. That's my daughter's name. It's not been as much creative work. It's been more notating my music. You know, I can push and stop the button when I'm just doing a music notation, or creative thinking for what I'm going to do somewhere down the road. I can do that kind of stuff. But the grunt work of actually creating new material and recording in my studio has been something that hasn't happened as much as I would like. But it will. Yeah. It will happen.
Because before you traveled a lot as well. I mean, I remember reading something about Japan. You had a project over there, different countries as well. So that's on hold as well?
For the time being, I don't want to miss watching Harper grow up. I want to be here. And I need her and she needs me. We need each other.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to keep concerts more within
nearby
4 or 5 hour drive time and not do these long tours. I mean, I'm not saying that you won't see me one day in Europe. It could happen.
Yeah.
But my priority would be here in Colorado. As far as the band goes, I actually moved from North Carolina to Colorado, which is around 1,000 miles apart, and that was because of COVID.
Oh, that's recent.
Yeah, it's been recent. Yeah, it was September 2020 when we moved, and I used to play about 150 to 200 concerts a year in my region in North Carolina.
Wow.
And it all got shut down, and my wife's work became not very good either because of COVID. And we had to find new opportunity just to pay the bills. And so we found this wonderful opportunity in Colorado in a nice home that had 9-foot basement.
Wow.
Which is crazy. That's tall for a basement. So I was able to trick out my studio here.
Yeah.
So she got a better job. I have a much better space for my recording studio. So I've kind of transitioned from being a performing artist primarily to more of a studio artist primarily.
Recording,
and so far it's been working great.
That's cool. And you traveled the world. How did that influence your music? I mean, if you go to Japan, you hear different flavors of music. How did it influence your dulcimer playing?
Yeah, I've been to Japan, India, and Thailand, and played in those 3 countries, I think. There might have been somewhere else, but those are the ones I'm thinking of right now. So it just lets you, first of all, grow as a person. And any personal growth will influence your music.
Definitely.
It opened my eyes to how my understanding of music was very American. For instance, in India, they hear rhythm first, at least the area I was. I know India is a huge country with many musical cultures.
Yep.
But what I walked away from the people I was with was they heard rhythm first. Whereas in America, we hear melody, then chords, and then rhythm is sometimes an afterthought.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, was there any rhythm?
Yeah. It's just the rhythm and the chords support the melody.
Yeah.
Whereas in India,
it starts
depending, there may not be any chords depending on the music, traditional. And the rhythm is the real star. So that was an eye-opener for me, and it also let me know how rhythmically I was not even close to the musicians. I mean, they were just like, whew,
Yeah.
I was way behind. So I learned a lot just by also getting to know the people. Like, why is that? And as you get to know a little bit of the way the Indian culture thinks and their view of life, you start understanding a little bit why a rhythmic pattern is a nursery rhyme for their children. So, and in Japan, getting to know the people there, getting to know the personalities, they appreciate simplicity in their music. Now, some Japanese music can be the most complex,
high energy,
amazing, high energy musics, but with the people I was with, I can only speak from my experience. They loved the purity of a defined melody and the understated elegance of the supporting qualities of the music. It's just very different. So that helped me when I approached my newest albums to realize it's okay to play fewer notes and to focus on playing the notes with meaning, intention, and realizing that really does connect with people. Whereas in America, it's also represented in our films. It's all about this constant drama, this constant pushing forward and keeping you on the edge of your seat and guessing. And that's also reflected in a lot of our music. But there's also an appreciation for that simplicity and
that's
just appreciation.
That's something I aspire. And I think for my music, it's very important to have the melody. It's the main thing. So in that regard, we can shake hands.
What is your approach to songwriting? Because everybody is different. And how would you describe your creative process from start to finish of a new piece?
That's a good question. Mostly when I used to teach guitar, for instance, and a lot of my songs came from the 5 minutes in between the students. I was just noodling something and something came along, a melody or a piece of rhythm with the chords. And sometimes it's just fooling around and coming to a nice idea. So in that regard, I was talking about an adventure. That's right. The start of my music is mostly an adventure, in that I just experiment and try new things, moving my hands around. If you have a chord, for instance, and you use open strings, for instance, give and receive is the first part that you play on a dulcimer. I used to play that on the guitar. So the guitar picks up from you.
Ba-da-bum, ba-da.
Yeah, exactly. But those are open strings. So that was an inspiration, and I built from there. I've always record my ideas on the phone, because if I don't, I lose them.
Me too. The little voice memo app.
Exactly. Bam, bam.
Yeah, it's just boom.
Yeah, I've got thousands, and and some might be good, some might not in that regards. But I always record a memo, and then once I get to my home studio, I will try to record a piece, and then just try to feel what comes next. So it's a real approach of feeling and. Of course, technical ability and music theory, everything that I studied during the years accompanies that, but it's really heartfelt. So it's coming from the heart, and it needs to flow. And once I feel that it's not flowing, I just shut it down for a while. So that's how I built the song. I let it grow. And for instance, when I start with a guitar part, I then come up with a bass guitar part or some rhythm or the production sound or something like that. So I let it grow slowly, and then I made demos from all the songs that are coming out this year, and from those demos we went into the studio with drummer and a bass guitarist, a keyboard player, etc., and of course you. So so it begins in my head or heart, somewhere there in between. So that's basically it. Yeah.
I think we're very, very similar in our compositional approach. I can speak from my own experience. The times that I sit down and try to come at it too cerebral, at least with the composition side, I just get stuck. I'm like, okay. And it starts sounding very cookie cutter. Even if I do get something done, it's just boring. And I think kind of what you expressed was you just create sound and don't really care if it's good or not, and just start playing. And then once you find something you like, develop it,
Exactly.
and then start applying the music theory.
Yeah.
And
sometimes it can help, if you're of course you have to have some knowledge. I mean, you cannot put all the chords together and just expect a miracle. But
but chord voicings and like the really technical stuff, it sounds like you kind of apply a lot of that with the fine groom kind of.
Yeah, it's polished in a
on
way.
the other end.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's well, some things are I keep raw. For instance, that part that I'm playing in this song, it's never changed. So only the bass notes change in that rhythm part. And for instance, the melody was different in the demo, and it just didn't feel right. I started real up high, and I thought, no, I need to start lower. It matches the song much better. So that's more of a production thing and a choice to make it sound better. Which is all. Yeah, you have to be flexible, and you have to be honest to yourself as well.
And sometimes, from my own experience, a lot of it's reflective of where you're at in that day or that time in life.
Totally.
Oftentimes, when you listen to a live version of your favorite band, there's noticeable differences from the recorded version. Well, that live version may be 10, 15, 20 years after they recorded it in some instances.
Yep.
And I think as musicians, when we're doing music which may have elements of improvisation, if we're not playing it with the heart and the soul, which is beyond notes, which is a higher level than notes, then we can't really communicate anything that has merit or value to the listeners. And I think we have to be flexible.
Yeah, of course, but it has to resonate with yourself and with others. When it doesn't resonate with yourself, how can you make it resonate with somebody else? It's short-lived. And I don't want to make music that's short-lived. I want to last an impression on myself, on the listeners, and it has to have some meaning to it and some depth. So in that regard, I think we're much alike.
Absolutely, yeah. I think what we play from the great composers has been concrete, written down, and we play it the same way if we're playing classical music, for instance. But I think we would be probably shocked if they were playing it.
Yeah, it's an interpretation. we are making an interpretation of that music. Yeah. And it's also,
if they were playing it, it probably wouldn't be precisely what was on the page.
No, exactly. But that's the influence of the time, and the spirit of the time. Everything is influenced by the whole development of music, rock and roll, jazz, everything is. Classical music is not as pure as it was 500 years ago. You cannot compare it. So that's in that regard, it's based on the times and the spirit of the time.
How did you think about incorporating Hammered Dulcimer on this blurred, fusion-y composition of yours? What triggered bringing in a Renaissance era type sound?
I have to give credit to Logic Pro. There's I just knew there's this Middle Eastern vibe in the song, and I wanted a stringed instrument, percussive stringed instrument in that playing that part. So I looked through the samples, and I found the Indian Centaur. And so I used that throughout the demos and throughout the recordings. And later, I'm a purist in that regard. I want everything recorded real, no samples. Everything is played by musicians. It needs to be, top notch. So I just couldn't live with the Centaur sample. And some people were saying, it's good enough. No, it's not good enough. I need a real player. And so I actually started looking for what's the name of the instrument? They have it in Turkey. Anud, yeah, of course. So I tried to find someone who played it, but it's really hard to find someone to play this instrument on a Western style of music. So that was a challenge. I had some contact with players, and it just didn't develop into something real. And then I just started looking for a Centaur, and I learned that the Dulcimer is like really close in sound, but it's a Western instrument. So I just started looking for a Dulcimer player, and you were like a top Google search result because of your national championship, of course. And so your name came up, and I just pressed the link and saw your website, and just send you an email. So
cool. Yeah, because depending on how I play, it can. I said Renaissance-y sound, which is true, but I can also tap into those Middle Eastern or Eastern European kind of timbres and sounds as well. That's one thing I love about the Hammered Dulcimer is really I can do so many different genres, and there's not an association with the sound. For instance, the Indian sitar is so synonymous with Indian music. Yeah. It's like people will associate that typically. Whereas the Hammered Dulcimer, I would say it would lean towards Renaissance, but there's not a strong association with a specific genre or culture. So it's so wonderful in that I can do it with, I can do any kind of music with it. It's so fun.
Versatile. Yeah. But how you mentioned like, okay, I'm able to use it as a chameleon to match different styles. How do you approach something like that? Is it different hammers? Is it different technique, different dampening, different tunings, or everything?
Yeah, that pretty much encompassed everything. So on a piano, for instance, which is the other rare percussion and strings, but piano is finger percussion, whereas Hammered Dulcimer is mallet percussion. And you can also, I know, pluck the strings in a piano if you go in there. But
that's by the way, that's coming up in another song of mine. It's the last song on the album. The pianist he put his hand on there and he plucked strings and he dampened strings in a Middle Eastern kind of style. So,
and it's a cool sound and it's awesome. But the piano wasn't really made to be plucked, exactly. And you can do it. I'm not arguing that, but it's not really designed to do that. Whereas the Hammered Dulcimer is made to be plucked. In fact, it was probably a plucked instrument before it was ever a mallet instrument.
So it's maybe derived also from a harp?
Or sultry.
Yeah.
Yeah, sultry. So these are pretty contrasting sounds that you can get out of it. And then with mallet percussion, let me go back to where I started with the piano. Yes, you can change the timbre by the way you hit the string and play it with your fingers. But the location of the hammer will always be the same unless you alter the piano and physically move it.
Yeah.
Well, on a hammered dulcimer, because it's mallet percussion, I have more influence over timbre than a piano because I can change not only the velocity, but the angle, the striking surface, the location on the string, and really transform the timbre into something completely different.
So when you're hitting the note, and that's the same for the guitar, close to the bridge, to a bridge, it sounds differently than in the middle of the string, where it's more resonant.
Which is something you'll see me do on Give and Receive, where I do that long kind of dun 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 dun.
Build up.
You'll see me start on the far left, I think it was, of the instrument, and go farther center. It's those subtle timbre changes that provide the coloration. If it was the same color, the same velocity, for instance, a sampled sound, that would be boring.
Yeah.
One reason why we get real players on real instruments is because of the coloration. And the hammered dulcimer is an instrument which is virtually impossible to create a good sample from, because if you were to capture all of the nuances of the instrument, it would just be...
Yeah, then you have 10 different variations of each note, and then all the dampened sounds. And,
It would be 10 times more than a piano. And it's been done on piano. I'm not saying it couldn't be done ever, but it would just be, man, to
tedious.
even control that. Yeah, even to control that as the operator of the library would just be crazy. So, yeah, I think the hammered dulcimer is an instrument that should be played live. I agree with that. And I also agree with your approach. It's always better to get a real human playing it rather than using a library. But I will say that Logic Library has created opportunities for me before, not just with you, but another artist, which I have a non-disclosure on, but a prolific fusion band contacted me wanting hammered dulcimer because that Logic library
was not sufficient.
It just wasn't good enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to keep the artistic flow going. I mean, if you're in a writing process or you're producing, you can get sounds quickly and just get an idea of what it can sound like. But that's why I love the process. You know, it's like it starts small and it grows. And at some point, it's so exciting to approach musicians and say, okay, this is the project. I want you to play this live with your interpretation, your style, matching the production. So that's I just love that process. You know, it's like it's blooming, it's coming alive, and that's something I experience with each song. So that's it's really cool.
It's kind of interesting how different music sounds in the era where we can do that type of writing as opposed to the 1940s, where somebody didn't have a computer and a sample library. They had to hear it all in their head and actually physically write it with a pen, or have musicians present to try sounds. And one thing that I've learned with that, and this is not necessarily a criticism, it's just an observation, is people are typically writing on a keyboard. And the word idiomatic oftentimes doesn't matter. What I mean is, how actually playable is this, or appropriate is this for the particular instrument? What composers want is a sound. And how you create that sound or get to that end result, they don't really care about. And a prime example of that was my collaboration with Bear McCrary I was involved as the featured one of the featured performers on God of War Ragnarok, and Bear was and the production team was just like, we don't care how many takes, we don't care how many alternate tunings you have to do, just
get it done,
get it recorded, just get it done. And it's kind of cool because I was able to do things on a Hammered Dulcimer that
it's not a regular
thing. Conceivably are impossible outside of the studio. And at the end of the day, what people want is a sound. And
it's more functional.
It's a different type of writing. Yeah. Well, it's just totally different. Like what strings, for instance, and orchestras do on a lot of these modern soundtracks are not playable live. But they have.
That's the same with
cool.
my song. I mean, I didn't think of a tuning. I was only thinking about the guitar and then bass guitar, piano. But if I had known this restriction or the consequence of you asking you, and you have to retune the whole instrument to get this part done, it's a different approach.
Totally different. Yeah. Well, and what they do in a lot of these soundtracks is the string players will come in and they'll have this piece of music that is not idiomatic and is, virtually impossible to play unless you had 500 hours to practice it or something. But they say, look, just play it and get it close. And as long as it's good enough, what we can do is kind of merge some of that with a sample library.
Layer it.
To get the real human element or some autotune and all that stuff. Yeah. So it's interesting how different musics, I'm just making an observation, when composers are after a sound and have complete freedom to do anything they want with those sounds, music ends up sounding very, very different. And there's definitely an appreciation for that approach. Just turn on your music, listen to orchestral music from the 40s compared to soundtrack music of today, and it's mind-blowing how different it is.
Of course. I mean, the authenticity is oftentimes forgotten and lost. I mean, that's why I try to be authentic and as pure as possible in making the music. I mean, of course, you can do a lot of things in the computer and change timing. You can influence the pitch, etc., etc. It's you can even chop up recordings and use different takes. It's so easy these days to manipulate a song. I mean, it's crazy. You're also active on social media. How do you cope and deal with the pressure? I mean, it's something that I'm constantly thinking of. I gotta be active on social media to be present, to promote my music. You're not only a musician, but you're a marketing expert, and you need to push your music. I mean, it's not purely making music anymore. As an artist, as maybe a starting musician as well.
Well, it's kind of interesting that you say that it's not only creating music. I would say this is not a good thing. It's just an observation. Actually, your music that you're creating is probably one of the least important things if you want to make it professionally. I wish it weren't that way, but
it's a painful conclusion.
But artists that are financially successful know how to market themselves. I mean, I won't mention any names, but I've seen a lot of people that get a lot of recognition or attention that are not the best musicians, but they may have a really good personality or they may know how to market themselves. And I think the biggest thing is that you have to appreciate is they're willing to take risks and they're willing to handle criticism. And it is hard for me, as you've already mentioned in your opening comments. How do you manage the criticism? Well, it's hard. And I just like to make a statement. Artists have feelings, and we do see the negative comments.
Absolutely.
I don't respond to them, but I do
is that
see
something
them.
you have learned throughout the years?
Yes, it's something that I've had to learn to manage and
Because
and cope
I
with.
can imagine that's something for me personally that I'm quite sensitive as a person, and as a
And we should
musician,
be sensitive.
yeah, and so
Yeah,
in that regard,
yeah.
it's something that yeah, that's straight to the heart. You know, it's talking about my music and something that was my inspiration, and that I found very. And it was it's a labor of love, you know. So when somebody is attacking or
Yeah.
it can be very difficult.
Yeah, and so oftentimes you hear people trying to help. Well, you should get thicker skin. And it's like, well, that doesn't work. But what does work, what I've learned, is we have to learn to channel and ask a question of when somebody leaves you a troll comment on the internet. That's more about them as a person and not about me as an artist. And many times you don't know what state of mind they're in when somebody leaves a troll comment on the internet. Like, I've learned to try to ask the question, where are they in life? What do they feel like? What led them to say something like this? And to just stop and to overcome the bad feelings with the prayer of gratitude for what God has given me. That, hey, this may not be the person that my music is meant to comfort and reach, but what about the other people? The 5,000 good comments I get.
Absolutely.
To every one troll comment, and that probably is an accurate ratio.
But in the end, the negative comments they weigh much more.
Yeah. So what I've done is when I get a good comment that I can tell somebody took the time to think out, I print it out and I keep it in my office room,
just as a reminder.
And I just as a reminder and a continual exercise in gratitude. That as long as my heart stays humble, as long as my heart stays grateful, and as long as I can realize that my music is making me, as you said, starts with me, and then it reaches out, then the negative comments don't affect me as much. It's when I get inside my head and, have to fight becoming a narcissistic type of person. That's when the negative comments start dragging me down. Well, who does that reflect? That reflects me.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a flaw in me.
Yeah.
So I'd say gratitude is how I've learned to overcome all of that. As far as the social media side, I've really learned in the modern world, YouTube for me at least, is a lot more effective than anything else. Twitter has some merit in connecting with producers and composers. But as far as connecting with new fans for my music, not as much. Facebook is still a great tool, but it's
a little outdated.
So 2010. Yeah, it's so 2010. And YouTube, though, when you can actually connect with your fan base.
You want some water?
Here's my music. Yeah, I'll take some water. Virtual water. When you can connect with your fan base, YouTube is just awesome.
Yeah.
So that's where I put my attention primarily.
Did you apply a certain strategy, or did you have help with building your audience?
I didn't really get any help with my YouTube channel. I mean, aside from fans and family
and figuring it out yourself by using YouTube.
yeah. It was pretty much just my mentality was, I'm going to take a video of me actually playing the Hammered Dulcimer. I'm going to try to have the best sound quality that I can have with what I have available today. And the video work, I'm willing to let that one go because it's just too expensive. I can't afford a good camera. I can't afford getting filmmakers and all that involved, but I can do the sound.
You have
So
to start
that was
somewhere.
yeah, that's where I started. And on YouTube, that's what people care about the most, honestly. Especially here in 2023, people are after authenticity. They're sick and tired of produced content that is fake. Now, if it's produced content that is real, then yeah, they're into that. But if there's any sense of contrived or sense of fakeness, it just doesn't work as well. And so I would say if you're a musician, get as good a microphone as you can, put it on your instrument, even if you're recording with your iPhone to do the video work, just have good sound. And from there, grow your channel.
Exactly. Yeah, that's good advice.
Although it's interesting, on YouTube, 10 years ago, it was about short videos. And now short videos kind of have its own thing.
Yeah.
And then YouTube videos can go longer than they could have 5, 10 years ago. I don't know why that is, but that's the new 2023 is long videos actually are fine.
Yeah. I'm kind of happy with that because, no, but I mean, it's very two-sided, you know. There's an audience that is watching like the 10-second clips and don't even watch 2 seconds of it, and then think it's garbage, and they swipe. And there's another audience that is more into the in-depth making music, to really feel and experience something. It just takes longer. I mean, you cannot experience something in 10 seconds, but the world is leaning towards that right now, and I find it's
annoying. Maybe I'm just curmudgeon-y, but I don't get it, and I don't know why I would want to watch a movie for 10 seconds.
Yeah.
It just, maybe it's not reflective of my personality, but the other side to that is, like you're saying, if the attention span is literally 2 seconds or 10 seconds, then I don't know. I don't know if that's a good thing.
Well,
I don't know.
As a content creator, you have to be aware of this.
Yeah.
You have to engage a feeling of within 2 seconds. Somebody has to know if they want to watch the whole 10 seconds or 20 seconds.
Yeah, and I've never really. You're right. I mean, if I'm after trying to get 1 billion views, you're right. But I've never approached my videos with that much thought, I guess, from a producer's view.
Marketer.
I've just wanted to create good content. Actually, got to know some of the Studio Ghibli producers a little bit. A couple of them, I actually still stay in contact with today. And I asked, how do you handle, the negative reviews? And the reply, which won't mention any names, was they just wanted to create movies that they enjoyed.
Yeah.
They said, if we like it, then, we've done our job.
Yeah.
We're not trying to create something that's going to get 10 out of 10 stars. We're not really, I mean, we like good reviews and everything, but our goal is to create beautiful artwork that we enjoy. And I've kind of applied that thinking to my approach now. Is if I enjoy it, then the right audience will find it. So maybe I don't get the first 2 seconds. Maybe it takes 2 minutes for my music to really get going, or 3 minutes until.
Well, at first somebody has to take the time. I mean, your music doesn't start off with a big house beat. I mean, which triggers something in the listener of youthful listeners. So in that regard, somebody has to take the time to play your music, and that's something. For me
and
as
that's that's where I'm headed. Like, if you create really good music that is honest and something you enjoy, then somebody out there is going to find it and like it. And that audience, that person is going to be loyal to you as the artist.
Yeah.
If you're creating something that is not authentically you and you're going for the masses, you may get the masses. You may get the views.
But you lose yourself.
But as quickly as those people gravitated and latched onto your music, they'll let it go.
Yeah.
And they'll go for something else. And it's a giant balance, and every person's career and every artist's career is totally different. And I'm not giving advice. I'm just saying what I personally have sought after is I'm going to create music that I love. And some of the pieces that I love the most and I think are my best, I go and look at my reports. They get the least amount of listens. And part of me doesn't understand that, but then again, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody has a different ear and a different sentiment to each song. So yeah, it's really interesting how the audience perceives music, your music, instead of yourself. What are your dreams and future aspirations as a musician? Any interesting projects coming up or collaborations?
So, great question. I would love to do more soundtrack work, and that is trickling in.
Is that something you can do from home?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. My home studio, I have tricked out to where I can, for the Dulcimer recording, I think I can create as good a sound as anywhere. Now, I can't record a whole orchestra, or I don't have all the mixing tools that maybe Abbey Road studio has. But if I'm just recording the Dulcimer, I think I can do just as good a job as Abbey Road's for what I do. And so, yes, I do that from home. And one thing also, as far as what I can do, is I can read the music to play it, but I can also bring in that element of how to think composer to the Hammered Dulcimer. So oftentimes on these projects, I'll get, here's the melody. Now, make that sound good on a Hammered Dulcimer.
Yeah.
And there may be a video conference that I have, for instance, an upcoming project, which I can't announce, is Flintlock's Siege of the Dawn. And it's a really cool soundtrack, and it's a AAA production.
Yeah.
Well, what I had for that was the composer sent me Eric Hillman, awesome guy, by the way. Great composer, great musician, great vocalist. He's an all-around.
Oh my God.
Great. Yeah, he does it all. But anyway, he sent me these tracks that he'd created using mostly stringed instruments. And he said to try to create kind of a parallel world, if you will, but on the Hammered Dulcimer. So I took mostly, he sent me some sheet music, but mostly it was just listening. I took those themes and all those parts and came up with how this would sound good on multiple layers of the Hammered Dulcimer. And that's something that I really, really enjoy, of like, okay, how can I take this sound created on a completely different instrument and imitate that and come close on the Hammered Dulcimer? That, once again, that chameleon thing.
Yeah.
I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just one of the most enjoyable things I've ever done in my musical career. So I would love to do more of that. When I'm just playing a part that somebody's written, and there's not really artistic interpretation or any of my own freedom in that. I like doing it, but I don't like that as much. I like, once again, that keyword innovation when I can create. I love that's what I'm after.
Yeah. So it's always a balance for you to do your own music and write your own music and do other projects where you're more restricted in a way.
Yeah, and exactly. And then also you ask, where am I going? I'm going to create in this year a whole album of the Dulcimer layer or Dulcimer orchestra approach.
Cool.
I've never layered my music before, and it just creates up a whole new texture. As we talked about, it can't be done live, but but it's still organic and it's still real.
Well,
And it's
you can do it live, but then you'd have to
nine
record
dulcimers.
you have to, no, you do it with a backing track, but it's not as live as you want.
Yeah, exactly. And what I'm doing, it's not looping.
No.
Okay, these are not the same parts played over and over again. It's very unique. Each phrase, each thing, it's all, none of it's looped.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if I had live 9 dulcimer parts, it could be done. 9 dulcimer players, but I just want to create really good music, and that constantly on the envelope of what can I do with this instrument that either hasn't been done before or I haven't done before.
Yeah, stretch the boundaries.
Yeah.
That's cool. Okay, Joshua, let's wrap it up. I mean,
Okay.
thank you so much for your time. We've talked about so many things already, and I just wanted to say again, thank you for participating on my song. And I definitely hope we're gonna work together in the future. So for me, thank you. And
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
see you on another project.
Sounds great. Sounds great. We'll do it again sometime.
Absolutely.